Welcome to Prime 9, the countdown show that covers the very best in baseball. Guaranteed to start arguments, not end them. This week it's the 9 greatest pitching seasons of all time. Why 9? That's baseball. 9 players, 9 innings. Prime 9. The best way to appreciate the men on the mound who we've selected for the greatest pitching seasons of all time is to look at some of the guys who failed to make the list.
That's a Nintendo curveball.
The player whose name is on the award for Best Pitcher of the Year.
He struck him out!
Guys who won 30 games in one season.
McKay wins his 30th ball game of the year!
ERA champions.
Devastating pitch.
Pitch was nasty.
He struck him out!
The all-time strikeout leader.
Here's the payoff pitch. He struck him out swinging! Strikeout number 5,000!
Men who pitched perfect games.
27 up, 27 down, baseball immortality!
Men who pitched 2 no-hitters in the same year. Not even someone who threw 59 straight scoreless innings made our list.
All Hershiser, the all-time record.
We've got 2 ground rules. The seasons had to take place since 1901. And to compare pitchers in different eras, we look closely at the stat ERA+. Here then are the greatest pitching seasons of all time, starting with number 9 on Prime 9.
Steve had the best motion I ever saw. He was a picture to watch throw, and he just was such a hard worker and understood his pitching style so good.
Throughout his 24-year career, the man they called Lefty was about as picture-perfect as a pitcher could be. Never more so than in 1972.
Lefty walk around the clubhouse and kind of scream, "Today's win day, today's win day." I look back on that right now, it sounds a little selfish. What's that make the other 4 days, you know?
Truth be told, the other 4 days were quite often losses. But when Carlton took the mound in '72, the Phils played with the heart of champions.
The Phillies were pretty terrible and only won 59 games that season. Carlton won 27 of them, which was an amazing feat in itself.
Oh, I think it was one of the single greatest pitching seasons anybody has ever had. I mean, Steve to dominate the way he did. That ball club had all kinds of problems, but maybe they stepped it up a notch when Steve was out there.
In general, when your ace, your horse, your stud is on the mound, everybody feels good about winning.
But especially so when your ace wins the pitching Triple Crown and has the best of his 4 Cy Young Award-winning seasons.
The greatest thing he had was a hard slider. No one could hit that, and he just kept throwing it, and they knew it was coming. He was awesome a lot of years, but this year he was the best.
His stuff was just dominant. The only one left-handed that I can remember being as dominant for one season like that was Guidry when he was with the Yankees.
Struck him out! Holy cow!
I saw some great pitchers, but one of the best seasons I think I ever saw was 1978 with Ron Guidry. He had a fastball that came down the middle and would explode away.
Guidry's slider was incredible. Nobody could lay off of it. As soon as he got 2 strikes, the guy swung.
Swung on and missed!
It was like, don't swing!
That slider was Guidry's outpitch, for it was there 1 second and beyond you in a flash. No wonder they called him Louisiana Lightning.
He just seemed to come into his own and take over in '78. When the little man from Louisiana walked out to the mound, it was a tough night for the opposition.
And Guidry was never tougher on a foe than that night in June when the Angels came to the Bronx.
Struck him out! Holy cow, number 15!
The man they also called Gator was so overpowering that night, he gave birth to a new baseball tradition.
The fans late in the game got into it to the point where when there were 2 strikes on an Angels batter, they would all rise.
Listen to the crowd now, and every 2-strike count, you'll hear them.
You wonder which section did it begin in, or who was the person that first stood, but it all started that night.
18, holy cow! 18 strikeouts!
It was certainly Guidry's most dominant outing in 1978, but his most important one took place in game number 163.
a one-game playoff to decide the American League Eastern Division champion. The Yankees are going with Ron Guidry, starting with only 3 days rest.
We felt like going up there, with Guidry on the mound, that, we had a great chance of winning the game.
Gator would get that win, his 25th of the year, thanks in great part to Bucky Dent's 3-run shot.
It's been a great year for me, and to come back and win on the last day of the season, that made my year complete.
That year, he was head and shoulders above the next best pitcher, so that was the year of Guidry.
What an exhibition by the Louisiana Lightning Man.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the greatest pitching seasons of all time. You've seen the 9th and 8th best. We now continue with number 7. Christy Mathewson was one of the 5 original inductees in the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and there were many reasons why.
Christy Mathewson was a trailbreaker. He was the first sports icon in America.
The big stars of the game, until Babe Ruth came along and changed things, were the pitchers. Christy Mathewson at that time was idolized across the country. He was a very handsome guy. He was a college graduate.
That was a big deal in baseball in those days because not many players had been to college. Gone to Bucknell, was his class president there, and was very much a guy who presented a positive image for baseball in an era when not many players did.
Christy was also one of the best pitchers baseball has ever seen. He threw a record 3 shutouts in the 1905 World Series. And 3 years later, he had a season that all but defied belief.
In 1908, he wins 37 games, and it was a special 37 because of the low earned run average and the paucity of walks that he gave up.
He had great control. Matty's catcher, Chief Myers, said that he didn't think Mathewson ever walked a hitter from lack of control. It was just pitching around a good hitter.
But even good hitters had no chance in 1908. For Mathewson baffled them with a rarely seen pitch.
Christy Mathewson, if not invented, certainly was the first man to perfect what he called the fadeaway. We'd call it the screwball now, where the ball could break away from left-handed hitters. This made him virtually unhittable.
But what made his feat even more remarkable was that he accomplished it in the thick of the legendary 1908 pennant race.
He was pitching on 1 day's rest, on 2 days' rest. That was his workload down the stretch. That was the way baseball was played, but not to this extreme.
He was the epitome of a workhorse that year, almost single-handedly pitching the Giants into the World Series.
That 1908 season of Christy Mathewson, that's got to be one of the great seasons by any pitcher.
But not quite as good as Sandy Koufax in 1965, when, much like Mathewson, he defined his era with a masterpiece of a season.
Sandy Koufax in 1965, a 26-8 record, 2.04 earned run average, 382 strikeouts. He was like a machine. He was like a machine that year.
His fastball snuck up on you and just exploded right in front of you. He just blew us away, and he did that in 1965 as good as anybody.
Koufax threw right over the top. He had that drop type of curveball. I really learned my curveball from watching Sandy Koufax.
He only had 2 pitches, but I used to say he could actually beat you with just one. When he wasn't getting the curveball over, he could just beat you with the fastball, so that's how good he was.
Koufax was better than good every time he took the mound, and on September 9th, he was perfect.
1965 was the year Sandy Koufax pitched a perfect game against us.
Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch.
I remember Sandy throwing the fastball and breaking off a good curveball.
Swung out and missed a perfect game.
You couldn't do anything with him.
And now he capped it. On his 4th no-hitter, he made it a perfect game.
Koufax pitched a career-high number of innings that year, but still had enough at the end to throw World Series shutouts in Game 5, and then on just 2 days' rest, Game 7.
He did it. Sandy Koufax gets his 2nd consecutive shutout of the Twins.
The Dodgers are the new world champions.
Sandy, in Los Angeles, when you pitched your 7-0 shutout, you were quoted as saying after the game, "I feel 100 years old." So today, how do you feel?
101.
101.
What Sandy Koufax did in 1965, leading his team to the eventual World Series championship, I would put that at the top of my list.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the greatest pitching seasons of all time. Lefty and Gator checked in at 9 and 8 respectively, followed by Matty and that Southpaw in Dodger Blue, which means it's time for number 5.
You know, the thing about Greg Maddux in 1995, he never made a bad pitch, not one.
Every time he went out, it was just magical.
Got it. What a job. He's the best, folks. He is the best.
Maddux certainly in that one season was as good as anyone could be.
Greg's 1.63 ERA led the National League by almost a full run. And when you adjust that for league average in ballparks, his ERA plus is 4th in the modern era.
That's why he's the best pitcher in the game.
You know, that 95 season just seemed to be a little bit a notch above everything else. It was almost a shock if he went out there and gave up more than 2 runs in a game. He was just that locked in all year long.
Maddux went 19 and 2 in 95 and became the first pitcher ever to win 4 straight Cy Young Awards.
One of the toughest guys to hit when the count was in your favor. Right when you thought you had him in a situation, somehow he'd always seem to make the perfect pitch.
3 balls, 2 strikes, 2 outs. Maddux, there they go, the pitch. Struck him out!
Greg led the league in 9 pitching categories that year and won his 6th straight Gold Glove.
Maddux diving, gets up and throws from a knee.
Those remarkable statistics don't really celebrate how good he was.
Nobody does it better in the National League than Greg Maddux.
To have a guy like Greg Maddux take the field and go out there game after game after game, prepare himself almost like Albert Einstein.
Maddux, though, you go straight from kindergarten to the master's program. 3 pitches, U-turn.
It was remarkable in terms of his brilliance, in terms of his pitching strategies.
Mr. Greg Maddux. Strike 3 call, there's your ball game.
No one had a better season in the 90s than Greg. But the best of the 80s belonged to Doc in 85, the year after his amazing rookie season.
Number 16, the white gut.
When he pitched, whether it was at home or on the road, there was a buzz, there was electricity in the air. The world was watching.
Got it. It's over.
It was always exciting for him to be on the mound because anything could happen.
Ball strike 3.
He dominated the game so much in those early years.
Struck him out with a slow curve. A beautiful pitch.
You could really expect all of a sudden for the fastball to be up 95, 96.
Fastball, got it.
He always had that little extra in his hip pocket that he could go to.
Swing and a miss, strike 3.
I can see him today throwing that high fastball and that great curveball.
Curve struck him out.
And it was something to watch. You wished that you were on his side instead of against him.
With surgeon-like precision, Doc dissected the National League, leading it in wins, strikeouts, and earned run average.
I went to the American League in '85, and I remember I got a call from Gary Matthews, the Sarge. And he told me, he said, "Hey man, you are lucky you in that American League." And I didn't know what he's talking about. I said, "Why, Sarge?" He goes, "Because you don't have to face that Dwight Gooden over there in New York."
Good fastball blows Sandberg right out of it.
Gooden was a machine in '85, finishing the year with 8 shutouts and 16 complete games.
He would challenge you. He'd come after you. He was like an old-time battler, an old-time pitcher out there. He's going to come right here. It's you and me. Let's go at it.
Fastball, swing and a miss.
I don't think there's any question that that was one of the greatest seasons anybody had or could have.
But our next pitcher took Doc one better.
Pitching, number 45, Bob Gibson. He struck him out swinging.
This is one of the toughest, most formidable, most intimidating pitchers ever to take the mound, and never more so than in 1968.
He wanted to win every game. He didn't want anybody to hit him.
and you ask him and he'll tell you.
68 just happens to be the year that everything came together. I could throw the ball where I wanted to pretty much, and yeah, I was in a zone.
He was one of the toughest pitchers I ever faced, and I tell you what, this is one thing I didn't tell a lot of people, but my wife used to go to the restroom when I faced Gibby. She don't want to see it, I guess.
At one point during the season, Bob allowed just 2 earned runs in 95 straight innings. He was the league MVP and best pitcher of the year.
Bob Gibson ended up winning the Cy Young that year. He pitched 11 shutouts.
Actually, he threw 13, the most in one year since 1960. The man had 28 complete games in 68 and threw 48 2/3 straight scoreless innings. And that led to an astounding ERA, the best since 1914.
An ERA for the entire year of 1.12. I mean, just ridiculous. And then when it got to the World Series, he strikes out 17 Tigers in one of the most intimidating performances you'll ever see.
And he could end it all now with the most dramatic of flourishes. He got it! Struck him out!
Thanks to Gibson and some of his fellow pitchers, Major League Baseball made a revolutionary change after 1968.
Pitching was too dominant. At the end of that season, they ended up lowering the mound. And in 69, we had to pitch from, instead of 15 inches, down to 12.
Gibson was at the forefront of a number of performances and a number of developments in baseball during that era, leading up to a series of things that have generally benefited the hitter rather than the pitcher.
We now return to Prime 9, focusing on the greatest pitching seasons in baseball history. To qualify for this show, a pitcher had to have a season for the ages. So far, we've seen some great ones. And now it's time for the very best, years that almost defy belief. And here they come, right on time. Tickets, please. The big train, Walter Johnson, had many great seasons, but one stood out amongst the rest.
Walter Johnson's 1913 season has to be considered one of the greatest seasons ever by a pitcher. The numbers alone are staggering.
He had an earned run average of 1.14, which was the lowest in his career. He had 36 wins, which was the most he had in his career, and he had 11 shutouts. That's the most he had in his career there.
Johnson led in almost every pitching category that year, thanks to his dazzling signature fastball.
If you look at the few frames that we have of Walter Johnson pitching, and you look at that easy sidearm motion, it looks like picnic beer ball. Hey, I could hit against that. But everybody who ever faced him said they'd never seen or heard a fastball like that before.
Walter Johnson, as far as I'm concerned, was the greatest pitcher in baseball history. He was very difficult and tough for right-hand hitters and also even left-hand hitters. And he was never clocked, but no doubt was the fastest pitcher in history.
At his peak, and certainly in 1913, it was pretty much one fastball after the other. Even the greatest hitter said you knew it was coming. You knew it was going to be over the plate, and you still couldn't hit it. Some of them would even say, sometimes I never even saw the ball, I just heard it.
It's been almost a century since Johnson's remarkable 1913 season, and no pitcher since has come close to his 36 wins. From April to October, the big train rolled on.
There have been a lot of great seasons by pitchers in the history of baseball, but you can't have a discussion about which was the greatest without including Walter Johnson's 1913 season.
But while Johnson may have been the best pitcher ever, he didn't have the best season ever. That honor belongs to Pedro Martinez in 2000.
He made great hitters look terrible.
He makes some very good hitters look awkward.
And I'll tell you what, if you ask all those hitters back then, they'll say the same thing. It was the most dominant period ever.
Swing and a miss. He struck him out on a high fastball.
Great pitchers are like that. You know, they're not going to give you a lot to hit, and Pedro was certainly one of those guys during that year.
He struck him out on a curveball.
When he was on, there were not a lot of guys that could get a hit off of him.
I think Pedro had two things going for him. One,
Everybody was scared of him.
Look out. Uh-oh.
And then he had the electric fastball, the nasty hook.
Breaking ball, strike 3 called.
And then he had a changeup.
And a swing and a miss. He strikes out the side.
He was flat filthy. And you think about it, he was doing this in the American League where they have a designated hitter.
He usually throws what you least expect. Breaking ball, strike 3.
Pedro walked only 32 batters in all of 2000. And he struck out an amazing 284 in just 217 innings.
Swung on and missed, strike 3. Pedro Martinez with 15 strikeouts. An absolutely sensational performance by the best pitcher in baseball.
Pedro's ratio of walks plus hits to innings pitched is the lowest ever, and his ERA plus numbers set a modern-day record.
Great pitching has been characterized as an ERA half the league average. Pedro Martinez in 2000 had an ERA that was almost 1/3 the league average.
Swing and a miss, he struck him out.
He just had this incredible air of confidence about him every time he took the mound.
But that is number 14 of the game for Pedro Martinez.
He was an event every time he pitched.
And another in the long list of masterful performances turned in by Pedro Martinez.
The greatest single-season pitching performance is Pedro in 2000. It is the greatest season in the history of the game.
And the best of our prime 9. One final pitch. As amazing as Pedro's 2000 season was, some believe his 99 campaign was even better. For that year, he won the pitching Triple Crown and struck out more than 13 batters per 9 innings. Oh, and he also had a tidy 23-4 record.
Pedro has 11 punch-outs through 5. 11 punchados for Pedro.
The All-Star Game was perhaps his finest moment in '99 as he fanned the first 4 National League batters.
Complete dominance by the game's greatest pitcher.
One of the pitchers who just missed the cut was the A's Lefty Grove. In 1931, Lefty went 31-4 with 27 complete games and a 2.06 ERA. He also tied an American League record with 16 straight wins, and incredibly, he allowed 2.5 runs fewer than the league ERA. Well, that's our Prime 9. What's yours?